This is our project on the Battle of Beanfield. I'm Olivia Edmundson.
I'm Deakin.
And I'm Erlind Kurti. So, a brief bit of history during the period of time. During this time of the Battle of Beanfield, Britain was known as Thatcher's Britain, as Margaret Thatcher was the Prime Minister during this time. Her influences in power led to the closing of coal mine industries, which left thousands of people jobless, and therefore led to a lot of protests, strikes and violence within the UK. Some sought for a revolution and change in the way that the country was led. So during the Battle of Beanfield, this happened on the 1st of June 1985. There was a convoy of 150 set vehicles which set off from Savernake Forest in Wilts, and they were on their way to the 12th free annual festival at Stonehenge. There was an estimated 450 people, including children and pregnant women, present during the event. These people consisted of peace protesters, green activists and well-known New Age travellers. The Battle of Beanfield was named by police as Operation Solstice. Police used roadblocks on the route that the convoy was set on, which then diverted the convoy to a local Beanfield. Here they were trapped, and as some accused, ambushed. Around 400 police officers were present during the operation, which happened to be 4 times more than the last year's event at Stonehenge. The travellers never reached their destination to Stonehenge, as they were sent back on their way home, and the free festival never happened as the police didn't let it continue.
In the previous festival the year before, in 1984, at Stonehenge, there was a considerable amount of damage caused. There was concerns of drug use and alcohol use, and a court conjunction banned gathering of the clans for 1985. Thatcher was already out of favour with the travellers due to her Conservative Party ideas, and this may have been a factor of why they carried on going ahead with it, even though the court conjunction banned the gathering. During the mounting conflicts, the miners' strike and the poll tax riots, as my colleague Earl explained, the police were hated by many, as they were the ones seen on the front line defending Thatcher's new vision for Britain. They were seen to abuse their powers with beatings, unfair arrests and stuff like that. The New Age travellers had quite strong and different views from the society. The New Age travellers are a hybrid phenomenon, part youth subculture and part alternative lifestyle and part social movement. Their cultural politics has had an impact on many young people in Britain over the final 2 decades of the 20th century. Has origins in the free festival culture of the 1970s, New Age travellers became one of the most notorious folk devils in Britain in the 1980s and early 1990s. Notably, when they tried to hold festivals like sites like Stonehenge and other sort of historical bits like that. And despite the subsequent efforts of the Criminal Justice Act to criminalise their way of life, New Age travellers continue to adapt their lifestyle and retain a shadowy presence within the British landscape, as said Hetherington of 2000.
So, society's views on the New Age travellers varied between labelled as dirty, antisocial and drug takers, whereas some others saw to them as a group of people seeking a different way of life, one that didn't have to follow society's rules. They in turn celebrated personal freedom and were always travelling, sometimes often to abroad countries looking for enlightenment, such as India and Buddhist temples. This is how the annual free festival emerged from the term free, meaning liberation, and that of course the festivals were free, no one had to pay for it.
It can be argued that the labelling theory could be applied here due to the social interaction individuals showed. They were sort of given stigmas or negative labels, which then led them to becoming more involved in crime and deviance. That's the sort of theory behind labelling. As Becker said in his book in 1963, he writes that deviance is not a quality that lies in behaviour itself, but in the interaction between the person who commits an act and those who respond to it, for example the police. Labels attached to the New Age travellers, I mean, they could probably argue that they weren't deviant, but in the eyes of everyday society they probably were. And this is what happened to the travellers. People looked at them and labelled them as, because they're New Age travellers, they were probably causing violence, crime, alcohol related crimes, where they say they had no intention of causing any violence or causing harm. They were just on their way to the festival. This could obviously be argued that, you know, they thought they were going to get involved in some violence because they knew it had already been banned.
Okay, so were the police blamed for the violence? None of the travellers were armed with weapons or anything that could have caused any harm to anybody during the time of the festival or on their way where they were. Another point that was to take into consideration is that none of the travellers had any intention of causing any riots. They were simply en route to this free festival which they turned up to every year. During the riot and everything that occurred during the chaos, the police did destroy the travellers' vehicles, which to some of them was their homes. We have a video on here which shows evidence of the police brutality and the overreaction. This is roughly around 40 seconds.
No, it's not.
Alright, no, it's after 40 seconds onwards. My mistake.
Look at his face.
So yeah, as you saw there, there seemed to be a lot of brutality, mainly coming from the police side forces, and it didn't look like anybody was trying to cause any riots or any harm, but the police sort of took it overboard. But on the other hand, the New Age travellers were known for not taxing or registering their vehicles. Obviously, as they travelled a lot, they did cause a couple of nuisances in different areas, as they never stayed in one place. This was mainly the conflict between landowners as they took over people's land for festivals and living on without permission. They were known for living with a drink and drug culture, and they were also known for against conventional way of living. So that's basically against the government and how society portrays that everyone should live their life. And lastly, they were sometimes known for not being afraid to resort to violence in certain cases.
Some criminologists would say that societies appear to be subject every now and then to periods of moral panic. A condition, episode, person or groups of person emerges to become defined as a threat to societal values and interests. This links in with the Battle of Beanfield, as they were also subject to moral panic. This is significant to criminologists today in that it demonstrates that little has changed when it comes to subcultural groups. It establishes that there is still prejudice existing against perceived threats to everyday society. For example, extreme behaviour by the police at peaceful demonstrations such as the G20 summit protest. In that protest, a reporter called Ian Tomlinson was beaten and pushed to the ground with force by police. Minutes later, he collapsed and died. There was great controversy as to who was to blame, the police or him. And also very recently, the Dale Farm eviction, was there unreasonable force and was it prejudice against travellers? Some would say yes.
Next time.
No. Okay, this is a quote from Dr. Pamela Story. In this quote she says, from the Mirror on June the 3rd, when it was reported about the Beanfield, it said that I would found it difficult to distinguish between those upholding the law and those flouting it. Okay, to conclude, it's clear to state that the police used unreasonable force against the New Age travellers. This is because the New Age travellers did not carry weapons, but the police did carry them and used them on numerous occasions. We believe that they used unreasonable force because although the travellers were not afraid of using violence, they weren't intending to, whereas the police force went out specifically to force the travellers out in a military-style course of action, rather than taking the more liberal approach, which would have been more in line with the police ethics. The Battle of Beanfield is a clear demonstration of discrimination and prejudice, a war between the societies.